There comes a moment in a man's life when the world becomes very quiet. Not peaceful quiet, but empty quiet. He checks his phone and there are no messages, no missed calls, no one asking how he's holding up. The room feels still, like time has slowed down just for him. He gets up, moves through the day, but something feels missing. Conversations are gone. The support he once leaned on has faded. He looks around and realizes the truth he's been avoiding. Everyone he depended on is gone, and in that silence, one truth remains. When a man has no one left, he still has God. When a man has no one but God, the first feeling is not strength. It is heaviness. A quiet weight that follows him from morning to night. He wakes up and the room feels empty. Not because it is small, but because no one is waiting for him anymore. No calls, no messages, just silence. As the day moves on, the silence follows him. He goes through familiar routines, but they feel hollow now. Places that once felt alive feel distant. Conversations that used to matter are gone. And slowly, a question rises in his heart. How did it come to this? He tells himself he should be stronger, that he should not feel this way. But loneliness has a way of softening even the strongest man. Not to break him, but to reveal what he has been avoiding. In this season, fear begins to whisper. It tells him he has been forgotten, that everyone else has moved forward while he stayed behind, that maybe he's not enough. These thoughts do not come all at once. They arrive slowly, settling deep inside. But this is where something important is happening. With no one else to lean on, the man finally stops running from his thoughts. And for the first time in a long while, he turns inward and upward. This is where God begins to meet him. Not with loud answers, not with sudden change, but with presence, quiet, steady, and patient. When everything else is gone, God remains. And in that stillness, the man begins to realize this season is not the end of his story. When a man has no one but God, the silence starts to change its meaning. It no longer feels like emptiness. It becomes space. Space where his heart finally slows down and his thoughts stop racing. Without constant noise, he begins to notice what he was too busy to see before. He starts to remember moments he once misunderstood. Times when plans fell apart and he felt disappointed. Doors that closed suddenly. Relationships that faded without explanation. Back then, he called those moments failures. Now standing alone, he begins to see them as protection. With no one else to depend on, he begins to speak to God more honestly. Not polished prayers, not rehearsed words, just truth. He talks about his fear of being left behind, his worry about the future, his doubt about whether he will ever feel whole again. And in that honesty, he feels something unexpected. Not instant answers, but quite reassurance. A sense that he's being heard, that he's not invisible, that even in this season, his life still matters. This is when faith becomes real, not something he learned from others, but something he experiences for himself. Being alone does not mean being abandoned. It means being invited to trust God without backup plans. Here, dependence begins to form, not on people, not on circumstances, but on God alone. When a man has no one but God, a deeper change begins. The fear that once ruled him slowly loses its grip. Not because life suddenly becomes easier, but because his heart becomes steadier. He begins to understand that strength is not measured by control over circumstances, but by quiet endurance. He sees now that God is not just a helper in hard times. God is a guide in lonely ones. When no one else is speaking, God's direction becomes clearer, not as loud commands, but as gentle, steady assurance. Doubts still arise, but he no longer runs from them. He brings them openly to God. He remembers stories of men who faced isolation and still found purpose. Those who walked difficult paths without comfort, yet discovered God's presence more deeply than ever. In those stories, he finds courage, not for immediate relief, but for patience and trust. This season teaches patience where he once rushed, trust where he once doubted, and quiet obedience where he once resisted. Every lonely step becomes a lesson. Every unanswered question becomes a bridge to understanding. God is not preparing him to return to the same life he had before. He is preparing him for a stronger one. When a man has no one but God, he is not abandoned. He is being built from the inside out. When a man has no one but God, the waiting begins to make sense. Slowly, like light spreading across the morning sky, he begins to understand that this season was never about emptiness. It was about preparation. Quiet, patient preparation. His heart is calmer now. The need for approval fades. The fear of being unseen diminishes. He no longer measures his worth by who stayed or left. He measures it by who never moved away. God. In this quiet, clarity begins to form. He notices paths that once seemed right, but would have led him astray. He sees relationships that could have distracted him from growth. He understands the value of patience, the power of focus, and the strength that comes from being guided by faith alone. He no longer fears being alone. He has learned that God can fill spaces people never could. What once felt like abandonment now feels like preparation. Every lonely moment was shaping him for what comes next. And now he is ready to step forward with trust, to meet life not with fear, but with the quiet strength that comes from knowing he is never truly alone. When a man has no one but God, he reaches a place of quiet surrender. Not because all his questions are answered, but because his heart has learned where to rest. He no longer demands signs. He no longer rushes timing. He trusts the hand that led him through the silence. He begins to understand that God was never trying to isolate him from love. God was teaching him how to receive it without fear, how to stand whole, not dependent, how to walk forward without needing constant reassurance. Peace settles in, not dependent on circumstances, not shaken by absence, but steady, faithful, quiet. He sees now that strength is not about what others give, but what God builds within him when no one else is watching. He knows deeply. He was never truly alone. God carried him through the quiet, prepared him in the empty spaces, and stayed with him when everything else faded. If you are in a season like this, take a quiet moment. Sit with it. Let God meet you there. He is enough, even when He is all you have. Trust Him. Step forward slowly. And know, this is not the end of your story. It is the beginning of strength that lasts. If this story touched your heart, take a quiet moment right now to pause and reflect. Let the words sink in, and remember that even in the loneliest seasons, God is with you, shaping you, strengthening you, and never leaving your side. You can support this channel by liking this video and sharing it with someone who might need to hear this message today. Every share could reach a person feeling unseen, unheard, or alone, and remind them that they are not forgotten. If you want more calm, faith-filled stories like this, consider subscribing. Together, we can walk through these seasons of life, learning to trust, to wait patiently, and to find hope even when the world feels silent. Take a deep breath, trust in Him, and step forward with faith. Remember, God is enough. Even when He is all you have, your journey is not over. It's just beginning.